Steve Harvey was in the middle of reading the next survey question when something happened that would make this episode of Family Feud unlike any other in the show's history. A United States Coast Guard admiral walked onto the stage unannounced, carrying an official document that would reveal a secret so profound it would leave Steve speechless and bring an entire family to their knees in tears of joy. But that moment was still 45 minutes away, and no one in the studio had any idea what was about to unfold. It started like any other Tuesday filming at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. The audience was buzzing with excitement. The lights were hot and bright, and two families stood ready to compete for $20,000. What made this day different was what 19-year-old Miguel Rodriguez didn't know: that his father wasn't where he thought he was, doing what he thought he was doing, and that everything his family believed about this day was about to change. "Welcome back to Family Feud, everybody," Steve announced, his voice filling the studio as the audience erupted in applause. He had no idea he was about to be part of one of the most emotional moments in television history. "We've got a great show for you today. Let's meet our two wonderful families." Steve walked toward the Rodriguez family from Miami, Florida, immediately noticing something different about them. There was a quiet strength in how they stood together, a unity that spoke of weathering storms, both literal and metaphorical. "All right, Rodriguez family, let me meet you all," Steve said, stopping at the podium. "Young man, you're the team captain. Tell me your name." The teenager at the front of the line stood straighter, his shoulders back in a way that reminded Steve of someone, though he couldn't quite place it yet. "I'm Miguel Rodriguez Jr., Mr. Harvey. I'm 19 years old." 19 years old, Steve repeated, studying the young man's face. There was pride there, but also something else, a weight that seemed heavy for someone so young. "What do you do, Miguel?" "I'm a sophomore at Florida State University, studying marine biology," Miguel said, his voice carrying a note of determination. "Following in my dad's footsteps. Sort of. He's the one who taught me to love the ocean." Steve caught the slight pause, the way Miguel's eyes flickered with something between pride and longing. "Tell me about your dad." Miguel's chest swelled with pride, but his smile carried a hint of sadness. "He's a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, sir. Chief Petty Officer Miguel Rodriguez Sr. He's been in the Coast Guard for 22 years. He's my hero." "A rescue swimmer," Steve said, impressed. "That's some dangerous work, jumping out of helicopters into rough seas." "Yes, sir," Miguel nodded. "He saved a lot of lives. Always says the ocean doesn't care if you're scared. You jump anyway because someone's counting on you." "Where is he today?" Steve asked, noticing the way the entire Rodriguez family seemed to shift slightly at the question. Miguel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He's at some training conference in Washington State. They're giving out service awards or something. He said it wasn't a big deal, just administrative stuff. He really wanted to be here, but..." Miguel shrugged, trying to appear casual about his father's absence. Steve noticed Miguel's mother, Elena, place a supportive hand on her son's shoulder. There was something in her eyes, too. A mixture of pride and worry that Steve had seen in many military spouses over the years. "Well, let's meet the rest of your family," Steve said, moving down the line. "Ma'am, you must be Mom." Elena Rodriguez smiled warmly, though Steve could see the strain around her eyes. "Yes, I'm Elena. I'm a pediatric nurse at Miami Children's Hospital." "A nurse," Steve said, appreciatively. "Another person dedicated to saving lives. Seems like service runs in this family." "It does," Elena said softly. "We believe in helping others. It's what Miguel taught all of us, that we have a responsibility to be there when people need us most." Steve moved to the next family member, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and the same strong jawline as Miguel Jr. "And who's this lovely lady?" "I'm Carmen Rodriguez, Miguel's mother," she said with a slight Spanish accent. "I'm 71 years old, and I'm so proud to be here with my family." 71, and looking like 51, Steve complimented, making Carmen laugh. "What do you do, Miss Carmen?" "I'm retired now, but I was a school principal for 35 years, Carmen said. I spent my life teaching children, and now I get to watch my grandson follow his dreams. Beautiful, Steve said, then moved to the next person, a woman who looked to be in her 30s. And you are? I'm Sofia Martinez, Miguel's sister, she said with a bright smile. I'm a marine veterinarian at the Miami Seaquarium. Another ocean lover, Steve exclaimed. Your brother really did influence the whole family. He did, Sophia agreed. Miguel used to take us to the beach every weekend when we were kids. He'd teach us about currents, marine life, water safety. Even when he was deployed on cutters for months at a time, he'd send us pictures of dolphins and whales he saw. Made us all fall in love with the ocean. Steve moved to the last family member, a young woman who couldn't have been older than 25. And our final Rodriguez family member? I'm Isabella Rodriguez, Miguel's youngest, she said shyly. I just graduated from the Coast Guard Academy. I'm a brand new ensign. Steve's eyebrows shot up. You followed your dad into the Coast Guard? Isabella nodded, her eyes shining. He never pushed any of us to join, but watching him, knowing the lives he saved, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. He pinned on my bars at graduation 3 months ago. It was the proudest moment of my life. A whole family of heroes, Steve said, genuinely moved. Now tell me, what would you do with the money if you win today? Miguel Jr. spoke up. Honestly, we want to surprise Dad. He's been talking about taking a family vacation for years, but something always comes up. A deployment, a hurricane response, search and rescue operations. We want to book a trip for all of us, somewhere tropical where he can just relax and not be scanning the horizon for people in trouble. The audience awed at the sweet gesture, and Steve felt that familiar tug at his heart that came with family stories like this. That's beautiful, Steve said. When was the last time you all took a vacation together? The Rodriguez family exchanged glances, and Elena answered quietly. 6 years ago, we went to the Keys for a long weekend. Miguel got called back after one day because Hurricane Maria was heading toward Puerto Rico. 6 years, Steve repeated, shaking his head. Well, let's see if we can make that vacation happen. Rodriguez family, are you ready to play Family Feud? Yes, they shouted in unison. Steve moved to meet the other family, the Johnsons from Atlanta, but his mind kept drifting back to the Rodriguez family. Something about their story, about the way they spoke of their absent father and husband, stuck with him. The game began, and the Rodriguez family played with impressive teamwork. They communicated with quick glances and half gestures, the kind of silent understanding that comes from years of adapting to sudden changes and long absences. During the first commercial break, Steve found himself drawn back to Miguel Jr. Tell me more about your dad, he said during the downtime. What kind of man is he? Miguel's face lit up. He's the kind of guy who sees someone in trouble and doesn't think twice, just acts. But at home, he's gentle, funny. He does these terrible dad jokes that make us all groan. Miguel's voice grew softer. He missed a lot when we were growing up. Birthdays, school plays, soccer games. But he never made us feel like we weren't his priority. Even from a cutter in the middle of the Pacific, he'd find a way to call and sing happy birthday. Sounds like quite a man, Steve said. He is, Elena interjected, joining their conversation. 22 years of service, and he still comes home from a rescue, talking about the families he's reunited, the lives that get to continue. He carries their thank you letters in his wallet until they fall apart. Steve noticed Isabella had tears in her eyes. You okay, baby girl? He asked gently. Isabella nodded, wiping her face. It's good this training conference he's at. He almost didn't go. Said he'd rather be here with us. But it's mandatory leadership development or something. I just wish he could see us playing. He loves this show. He watches every night when he's home, Sophia added. Makes us all sit together in the living room. Family time, he calls it. The stage manager called for places, and the game resumed. The Rodriguez family was on fire, winning the first 2 rounds decisively. Their unity was remarkable. When one hesitated, another jumped in with confidence. They played like a team that had spent years covering for each other, filling gaps, staying strong. As they entered the third round, Steve asked the question, "Name something people do to show they're proud of someone." Miguel Jr. hit the buzzer first. "Wear their uniform." "Good answer." His family cheered. Steve looked at the board. "Wear their uniform." The number 3 answer flipped over. Worth 18 points. The Rodriguez family continued their streak. Carmen said, "Display their photos," which was the number 2 answer. Elena said, "Tell stories about them," which was number 4. Sophia said, "Cry happy tears," which was number 6. It came back to Isabella, who paused, her voice thick with emotion. "Stand a little taller when you say their name." Steve felt the weight of that answer. It wasn't on the board, but the audience applauded anyway, recognizing a deeper truth in her words. The Johnson family got a chance to steal, but couldn't come up with the number 1 answer. Steve turned back to the Rodriguez family. "If you can tell me the number 1 answer, you win this round. What do people do to show they're proud of someone?" Miguel Jr. looked at his family, then at Steve. "They follow in their footsteps." Steve pointed to the board. "Follow in their footsteps." The board lit up, revealing it as the number 1 answer. The Rodriguez family erupted in celebration, hugging each other tightly. As they moved into the 4th round, Steve noticed some unusual activity off stage. His producer, Derek, was having an animated conversation with someone in military dress uniforms. Steve had been in television long enough to know when something was up, but he kept his focus on the game. The families were neck and neck going into the final round. The Rodriguez family needed this win to go to Fast Money. The category was, "Name something that makes a hero." The Johnsons went first, getting "saves lives" as the number 1 answer. They continued with "brave," "selfless," and "strong," before striking out on "wears a cape." Miguel Jr.'s family huddled. They needed to find 1 answer to win the round and the game. Miguel looked at his grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. "Steve," Miguel said, his voice steady, "someone who comes home." The studio fell silent for a moment. Even Steve felt the profound simplicity of that answer. "Someone who comes home," Steve repeated, his voice softer than usual. "Let's see if it's up there." The board revealed the number 5 answer, "comes home safe." The Rodriguez family had won the game. As they celebrated, Steve saw Derek urgently gesturing from off stage. During the commercial break before Fast Money, Derek pulled Steve aside. "Steve, we have a situation," Derek said quietly. "You need to know something about Chief Rodriguez." "What about him?" Steve asked, concerned. "He's not at a training conference," Derek said. "Steve, 3 weeks ago, Chief Rodriguez saved 6 people from a capsized vessel during a Category 3 hurricane off the coast of North Carolina. He jumped from his helicopter into 30-foot seas 5 times. 5 times, Steve, in conditions that should have been impossible to survive." Steve's eyes widened. "Is he okay?" "He's fine now." "But Steve, he's not in Washington State. He's in Washington, D.C. He's at Coast Guard headquarters. The Commandant of the Coast Guard is about to present him with the Coast Guard Medal for Extraordinary Heroism. It's one of the highest honors a Coast Guardsman can receive." "His family doesn't know?" Steve asked. Derek shook his head. He didn't want them to worry about the danger he was in. Told them it was just a routine conference. "But Steve, he's here. He's in Atlanta. The Commandant flew him here right after the ceremony. He's in a car outside, waiting." Steve felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. The Commandant himself wants to make the presentation to the family. He says what Chief Rodriguez did. Steve, the man should be dead. The fact that he saved 6 people and survived is nothing short of miraculous." Steve took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. "When?" "During Fast Money. We've coordinated it all. The family has no idea." Steve nodded, composing himself. This was going to be television that mattered, the kind of moment that reminded everyone why family was everything. The break ended, and Steve returned to the stage. The Rodriguez family was buzzing with excitement about playing Fast Money. Miguel Jr. and his mother, Elena, were chosen to play. "All right, Miguel," Steve said, positioning him at the Fast Money podium. "You're going to have 20 seconds to answer 5 questions. You ready?" Miguel nodded, focused and determined. "Ready, Mr. Harvey." 20 seconds on the clock, Steve announced. "Here we go. Name a place where heroes work." Miguel's answer was immediate. "Coast Guard Station." "How many lives does a hero save to get a medal?" "All of them they can." "What weather condition makes rescues dangerous?" "Hurricane." "Name something a hero's family does while they're gone." Miguel's voice caught slightly. "Praise." "What makes a hero come home?" "Love," Miguel said without hesitation. The buzzer sounded, and the audience applauded. Steve walked Miguel through his answers, revealing the points. He had accumulated 132 points, a solid start. As Elena took her position at the podium, Steve noticed movement at the side of the stage. A tall man in Coast Guard dress blues had appeared, his uniform immaculate, his chest bearing multiple ribbons and medals. Beside him stood a distinguished older man with Admiral's insignia. "All right, Elena," Steve said, his voice carefully controlled. "Miguel got 132 points. You need 68 points to win $20,000. Here we go." Steve began asking the questions, but his peripheral vision caught more movement. Several Coast Guard personnel were now positioned at the edge of the stage. The audience members who could see them began murmuring. Elena was focused on the game, not noticing the growing commotion. She answered the questions with the same quiet strength she'd shown all day. When Steve revealed her points, she had scored 75, giving them a total of 207 points. "Congratulations, Rodriguez family," Steve announced. "You've won $20,000. The family erupted in celebration, hugging and crying. That's when Steve raised his hand. Hold on. Rodriguez family, we're not done yet." The family looked confused as Steve's expression grew serious. "Miguel Jr., you told me your father was at a training conference in Washington State." "Yes, sir," Miguel said, puzzled by the sudden change in tone. "Son, I need to tell you something," Steve said gently. "Your father hasn't been entirely truthful with you." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God. Is he okay?" "He's fine," Steve assured her quickly. "But he wasn't at a training conference. Rodriguez family, 3 weeks ago, your father, your husband, responded to a distress call off the coast of North Carolina during a Category 3 hurricane. The family stood frozen, listening intently. A 40-foot fishing vessel with 6 people on board had capsized in 30-foot seas. Winds were sustained at 120 miles per hour. The conditions were so severe that standard rescue protocols said it was too dangerous to attempt a rescue. Isabella gasped. "But he went anyway." Steve nodded. "He went anyway. 5 times your father jumped from a helicopter into those seas. 5 times he fought waves the size of buildings to reach people who were drowning. 6 people went home to their families because your father, your husband, refused to give up." Tears were streaming down Elena's face. Carmen was gripping Miguel Jr.'s arm. Sophia and Isabella were holding each other. "The reason he told you he was at a conference," Steve continued, "was because he didn't want you to know how close he came to not making it home himself. On his 4th jump, he was hit by debris and briefly lost consciousness underwater. His crew said it was only his training and instinct that saved him. But he surfaced, and he kept going." "That's my dad," Miguel Jr. whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Steve gestured to the side of the stage. "Rodriguez family, the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard is here, and he has something he wants to say." Admiral Christopher Manning walked onto the stage in his dress whites, his presence commanding immediate respect. The Rodriguez family stood straighter, Isabella actually saluting before catching herself. "Rodriguez family," Admiral Manning said, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "I'm here to tell you that Chief Petty Officer Miguel Rodriguez Sr. is one of the finest Coast Guardsmen I've had the privilege to serve with. What he did 3 weeks ago goes beyond heroism. It speaks to the very core of what the Coast Guard stands for, so others may live." The Admiral turned to face the family directly. "Mrs. Rodriguez, your husband has saved 43 lives during his career. 43 families who got to keep their loved ones because he was willing to jump into danger. But what he did during Hurricane Lance was extraordinary, even by his standards." Elena was sobbing now, held up by her children. "Which is why," the Admiral continued, "I flew to Washington, D.C. this morning to present him with the Coast Guard Medal for Extraordinary Heroism. It's the highest honor we can bestow for heroism not involving combat." The Admiral reached into his pocket and pulled out a case. "Chief Rodriguez insisted I bring this to you first," he said, and I quote, "My family has earned this medal as much as I have. They're the ones who let me go. They're the ones who wait. They're the ones who make me brave." The Admiral opened the case, revealing a gold medal with a red, white, and blue ribbon. The Rodriguez family stared at it, understanding the weight of what it represented. "But there's one more thing," Admiral Manning said, a slight smile breaking his formal demeanor. "Chief Rodriguez asked me to give you a message. He said to tell you that he's sorry he missed Family Feud, but he hopes you'll forgive him when you see him." "When we see him?" Miguel Jr. asked, hope rising in his voice. Steve finally let his own emotions show. "Rodriguez family, your hero isn't in Washington. He's here." The family turned as one toward the side of the stage, walking out in his Coast Guard dress blue uniform, his chest bearing the newly awarded medal among his other decorations, was Chief Petty Officer Miguel Rodriguez Sr. The reunion was explosive. Elena ran to her husband, jumping into his arms with such force he staggered backward. Miguel Jr. was right behind her, wrapping his arms around both parents. Isabella, despite being in her own Coast Guard uniform, abandoned all military bearing and threw herself at her father, sobbing "Daddy," like she was 5 years old again. Sophia and Carmen completed the family embrace, all of them crying, holding each other as if they might never let go. The studio audience was on their feet, applauding thunderously. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even the typically composed Admiral Manning was wiping his eyes. Chief Rodriguez held his family, his own tears flowing freely. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't want you to worry. Don't you ever lie to us again," Elena said through her tears, hitting his chest softly. "Ever. I don't care how dangerous it was." "She's right, Dad," Miguel Jr. said, his voice muffled against his father's shoulder. "We're strong enough to handle the truth. We've been handling it for 22 years. Chief Rodriguez pulled back enough to look at his son's face. "You've grown up so much. I'm so proud of you, mijo, taking care of everyone while I'm gone. I learned from the best," Miguel Jr. said. Steve stood back, letting the family have their moment. When they finally began to separate, still maintaining physical contact as if afraid to let go completely, Steve approached. "Chief Rodriguez," Steve said, extending his hand. "It's an honor to meet a true hero." Chief Rodriguez shook Steve's hand firmly. "Mr. Harvey, thank you for this. Thank you for letting me surprise my family. They're the real heroes. They serve too, in ways most people never see." Steve turned to the cameras, his voice thick with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, we talk a lot about heroes. We see them in movies, read about them in comics. But this is what a real hero looks like. Someone who runs toward danger when everyone else runs away. Someone who jumps into 30-foot seas because strangers need help. Someone who does it quietly, without fanfare, and then tries to hide it from his family so they won't worry." Chief Rodriguez interrupted gently. "Mr. Harvey, if I may?" Steve nodded, stepping aside. Chief Rodriguez faced the camera, his family surrounding him. "I need to say something. Yes, I jumped into those seas. Yes, I pulled those people out. But I'm not special. There are thousands of Coast Guardsmen and women who would have done the same thing. We do it because it's our job, but more than that, we do it because every person we save is someone's family member. Someone's Miguel Jr., someone's Elena, someone's Isabella. He paused, his voice growing stronger. The 6 people I pulled from the water that day, one was a 16-year-old kid on his first fishing trip with his grandfather. Another was a single mom of 3. There was a teacher, a mechanic, a retired nurse, and a man who was sailing to scatter his wife's ashes at sea. They all had stories. They all had people waiting for them at home. Chief Rodriguez looked at his own family. I jumped because I know what it's like to have someone waiting. I know what it's like to be the one who waits. Every time I go out, I carry all of you with me. You make me strong enough to jump, and you're the reason I fight so hard to come home. Isabella stepped forward. Dad, can I say something? Of course, mija. Isabella faced the audience, standing tall in her Coast Guard uniform. 3 months ago, when Dad pinned on my ensign bars, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "The uniform doesn't make you brave. Love makes you brave. The uniform just gives you permission to act on it." She turned to her father. I joined the Coast Guard because I watched you come home exhausted, sometimes injured, always drained, but always fulfilled. You showed me that a life spent in service to others is a life worth living. Admiral Manning stepped forward. If I may add something, in my 35 years in the Coast Guard, I've seen a lot of heroism. But what sets Chief Rodriguez apart isn't just his willingness to jump. It's his humility. He didn't want a ceremony. He didn't want recognition. He asked that instead of a formal presentation in D.C., he be allowed to share this moment with his family. The Admiral smiled. He also asked if he could wear his old rescue swimmer gear instead of his dress uniform, but I had to draw the line somewhere. Everyone laughed, breaking the emotional tension for a moment. Steve asked, "Chief, tell us about that day. What goes through your mind when you're jumping into seas that could kill you?" Chief Rodriguez considered the question. Honestly, not much. You train so much that your body just knows what to do. But if anything goes through my mind, it's faces. The faces of the people I'm trying to save, and the faces of the people waiting for me at home. Both push me to keep going. Were you scared? Steve asked. Terrified, Chief Rodriguez admitted without hesitation. Anyone who says they aren't scared in 30-foot seas during a hurricane is lying. But fear is just information. It tells you to be careful, to be smart. It doesn't tell you to quit. Elena spoke up. Can you tell them about the 4th jump? The one where you... She couldn't finish the sentence. Chief Rodriguez's expression grew serious. The 4th rescue was a 60-year-old woman. She'd been in the water for almost an hour. When I reached her, she was barely conscious. As I was securing her to the rescue basket, a piece of the boat's mast hit me in the head, knocked me out for maybe 10, 15 seconds. The family collectively inhaled. This was new information. When I came to, I was underwater, disoriented. The woman was still partially attached to me, and she was panicking, pushing us both deeper. Every rescue swimmer's nightmare. He paused, but training kicked in. Muscle memory. I got us both to the surface, got her in the basket. The crew said later that I was on autopilot. Don't even remember getting her secured. But you went back for 2 more, Steve said, amazed. 2 more people were still in the water, Chief Rodriguez said simply. What was I supposed to do? Leave them? Dad, Miguel Jr. said, his voice breaking. You almost died. Chief Rodriguez pulled his son close. But I didn't. I'm here. We're all here. That's what matters. Steve turned to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I've done this show for many years. I've met celebrities, athletes, politicians, but I've never been more honored to share this stage than I am right now. He faced the Rodriguez family. You came here to win money for a vacation, to give Chief Rodriguez a chance to relax without scanning the horizon for people in trouble. Well, I've got news for you. My foundation is going to make sure you get that vacation. All of you. Wherever you want to go, for as long as Chief Rodriguez's leave allows. The family protested, but Steve held up his hand. This isn't charity. This is America. Saying thank you. Thank you for 22 years of service. Thank you for 43 lives saved. Thank you for showing us what real heroism looks like. Admiral Manning added, and Chief Rodriguez, I have one more piece of news. Given your extraordinary service and this recent act of heroism, you're being promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer, effective immediately. Chief Rodriguez stood stunned. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing what you do, Admiral Manning replied. Keep saving lives. Keep training the next generation. Keep being the example that makes young people like your daughter want to serve. Isabella hugged her father tightly. Senior Chief Rodriguez. It sounds perfect. Wait, there's more. Steve said, grinning now. Rodriguez family, you won $20,000 today. But that was before I knew who you really were. Before I knew about the 43 lives, the countless sacrifices, the years of service. So here's what we're going to do. That $20,000, that's just yours, free and clear. But Coast Guard Mutual Assistance Society is watching today, and they've just pledged to donate $1,000 for every life Chief Rodriguez has saved to their emergency relief fund for Coast Guard families in need. $43,000? Elena gasped. $43,000 to help other Coast Guard families when they're struggling. Steve confirmed. Because Chief Rodriguez isn't the only hero in the Coast Guard, and their families aren't the only ones who sacrifice. Chief Rodriguez was overwhelmed. Mr. Harvey, this is too much. No, Steve said firmly. It's not nearly enough, but it's a start. Sophia spoke up. Dad, tell them about the letters. Chief Rodriguez looked embarrassed. It's nothing. It's not nothing, Elena insisted. Tell them. Chief Rodriguez sighed. I keep letters. Thank you notes from people I've helped rescue or their families. I read them on bad days, when I wonder if it's all worth it. Show them, Miguel Jr. urged. Reluctantly, Chief Rodriguez reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a worn envelope. This one's from the mother of a boy I pulled out of a riptide 5 years ago. He just started college. Wants to be a marine biologist. He smiled at his son. Sound familiar? He pulled out another paper. This is from a couple whose boat capsized on their anniversary cruise. They just celebrated their 40th. They send me a picture every year. How many do you have? Steve asked. Hundreds, Elena answered for him. He keeps them all. Every single one. Admiral Manning nodded approvingly. That's the difference between a good Coast Guardsman and a great one. The good ones save lives. The great ones remember that every life has a story. As the taping continued, the Rodriguez family shared more stories. Carmen talked about raising Miguel with her husband, how they instilled the values of service and sacrifice that he carried into the Coast Guard. Sophia recounted waiting by the phone during hurricanes, knowing her brother was out there somewhere saving lives while his family prayed for his safety. Miguel Jr. spoke about choosing marine biology to understand the ocean that had claimed so much of his father's time, wanting to know what called him away so often. But it was Isabella who delivered the most powerful moment. Mr. Harvey, she said, can I share something? Of course, baby girl. Isabella reached into her own pocket and pulled out a small waterproof case. When I was at the academy, things got hard. Really hard. There were nights I wanted to quit. But Dad had given me this before I left. She opened the case, revealing a photo. It was Chief Rodriguez in his rescue swimmer gear, soaking wet, exhausted, but smiling as he held a small person he'd just rescued. He told me, when you think you can't take another step, remember why you're taking it. Someone, somewhere, is counting on you to be strong enough to help them on their worst day. That photo got me through the academy. It gets me through every hard day. Chief Rodriguez wiped his eyes. That was little Maria, Hurricane Harvey. She was only young, separated from her parents in the flooding. Scariest rescue I ever did, because she was so small, so fragile, but she held on to me like I was her whole world. Found out later she's doing great, wants to be a doctor. See? Steve said to the audience. Every life saved has a ripple effect. That 3-year-old grows up to be a doctor who saves more lives. The 16-year-old on the fishing boat becomes someone who contributes to the world. It never ends. As the show wound down, Steve had one more surprise. Chief Rodriguez, we've been in contact with some people who wanted to be here today, but couldn't make it. We have a video message for you. The studio screens lit up, showing a montage of faces. One by one, people Chief Rodriguez had saved over his career appeared, sharing messages of gratitude. The teacher he'd pulled from a capsized kayak, the elderly couple whose sailboat had been destroyed in a storm, the construction worker who'd fallen off an offshore platform, the mother and children caught in a rip current. Face after face, life after life, all saying thank you. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Chief Rodriguez was openly weeping, surrounded by his family. The last face on the screen was that of a young man in a Naval Academy uniform. Senior Chief Rodriguez. He said, "You probably don't remember me. I was 8 years old when you pulled me out of the water in Key West. I'd gotten caught in a current, separated from my family. You saved my life. But more than that, when you got me to shore, you stayed with me until my parents arrived. You told me I was brave, that I did everything right. You made the worst day of my life bearable." The young man straightened. "I'm at Annapolis now, hoping to be a rescue swimmer. Because of you. Because you showed me that heroes are real. Thank you, Senior Chief. Fair winds and following seas." As the video ended, Chief Rodriguez was speechless. His family held him as he processed the magnitude of lives he'd touched. Steve addressed the camera one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've laughed a lot on this show. We've had fun with silly questions and funny answers. But today, we got to witness something real, something that matters. We got to see what service looks like, what sacrifice means, what love can accomplish." He turned to the Rodriguez family. "Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your service. All of you. Because you all serve. Every military family member serves in their own way." As the studio lights dimmed for the final shot, the Rodriguez family stood together. A rescue swimmer, a nurse, a principal, a veterinarian, a marine biology student, and a new Coast Guard officer. 6 lives bound by love, strengthened by sacrifice, united in service. But the story didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. In the days that followed, the episode went viral. Millions watched the reunion, the revelation of Chief Rodriguez's heroism, the beautiful testament to family and service. Donations poured into the Coast Guard Mutual Assistance Society. Young people inquired about joining the Coast Guard. Families of first responders shared their own stories of sacrifice and reunion. Chief Rodriguez and his family did take that vacation. They went to a quiet beach in the Caribbean, where for once, the senior chief could watch the ocean without scanning for trouble. But even there, his instincts never fully switched off. On their 3rd day, he noticed a snorkeler in distress and quietly swam out to help, returning the tourist safely to shore before his family even noticed he'd left his beach chair. "Really, Miguel?" Elena said when she found out. But she was smiling. "Old habits." He shrugged, then grinned. "But this time, I got to come right back to my chair. No helicopter, no reports, no debriefing. Just helped someone and came back to my family. That's growth." Elena laughed, kissing his saltwater cheek. Miguel Jr., who had watched the whole thing, shook his head in amazement. You really can't help yourself, can you, Dad? Would you want me to? Chief Rodriguez asked seriously. Never, Miguel Jr. replied. Never change, Dad. 3 months after the Family Feud episode aired, the Rodriguez family attended a special ceremony at Coast Guard headquarters. The Commandant had invited them to speak at the annual Coast Guard Foundation dinner, where Chief Rodriguez's story would be used to highlight the importance of supporting military families. But it was Isabella who stole the show that night. Now, several months into her first assignment, she stood before an audience of Coast Guard leadership, donors, and families to deliver a speech about what it means to be both a Coast Guard officer and a Coast Guard daughter. People ask me if it was hard, growing up with a father who was gone so much. Isabella began, standing tall in her dress blues. The honest answer is yes. It was hard. There were soccer games he missed, father-daughter dances, where my grandfather stepped in, birthdays celebrated over satellite phone calls with delays that made singing happy birthday sound like a strange echo. She paused, looking at her father in the audience. But here's what people don't understand. Every absence had a purpose. Every missed event meant someone else's father got to come home. Every birthday he missed meant someone else got to have another birthday. My father taught me that sacrifice isn't about what you give up, it's about what you make possible for others. The room was silent, hanging on every word. When I was 12, Isabella continued, I was angry that Dad missed my school play. I was playing Juliet, and it was a big deal to me. He was responding to a distress call from a cruise ship. 300 people were stranded in rough seas. He called me after, exhausted, apologizing. I told him I hated that he missed it. You know what he said? Isabella's voice caught slightly. He said, Bella, there was a little girl on that ship, about your age. She was terrified. When I helped her into the rescue basket, she asked if her parents were okay. I made sure they were the next ones I got. That family is together tonight because I missed your play. I'm sorry you're hurt, but I'm not sorry I went. She wiped a tear. That's when I understood. My dad wasn't choosing other people over us. He was teaching us that love isn't finite, that helping others doesn't diminish what you give your family, but it multiplies it. Every life he saved became part of our extended family. Their stories became our stories. Isabella straightened her shoulders. So, when people thank me for my service, I tell them I learned from the best. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being afraid and jumping anyway. I learned that strength isn't about being tough. It's about being gentle with those who need help. And I learned that being a hero isn't about recognition. It's about being willing to be forgotten as long as the job gets done. She looked directly at her father. Dad, you taught me that the ocean doesn't care about our plans, our schedules, or our celebrations. It takes when it wants to take. But you also taught me that as long as there are people willing to jump into those dark waters, there's hope. You are that hope for so many families, and you gave that hope to me. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. Chief Rodriguez made his way to his daughter, and their embrace in full military uniforms, both wearing their service ribbons, became another iconic image that spread across social media. 6 months after the Family Feud episode, another remarkable thing happened. Miguel Jr. was conducting research for his marine biology thesis on ocean rescue patterns when he discovered something amazing. In analyzing Coast Guard rescue data, he found that his father's rescue techniques had been studied and incorporated into training manuals. Without knowing it, Chief Rodriguez's methods had been saving lives even when he wasn't there. Dad, Miguel Jr. said, showing him the research, you've saved more than 43 lives. Every Coast Guard swimmer who's trained using your techniques, every life they save, that's your legacy too. Chief Rodriguez was humbled. It's not about legacy, mijo. It's about the next rescue, always the next one. But the universe had more surprises in store. 1 year after that fateful Family Feud episode, on the anniversary of the taping, Steve Harvey's production team reached out to the Rodriguez family. They had been selected for a special follow-up episode featuring the most memorable moments in the show's history. When the family arrived back at the studio in Atlanta, they thought they were just going to share an update on their lives. Chief Rodriguez had successfully completed his senior chief training. Isabella was excelling in her first command. Miguel Jr. was graduating with honors and had been accepted to graduate school for ocean conservation. Sophia had expanded her work to include rescue and rehabilitation of marine mammals affected by hurricanes. Elena had been promoted to head nurse in her department, and Carmen had come out of retirement to mentor principals in high-need schools. But Steve Harvey had one more surprise. Rodriguez family. Steve said as they stood on the familiar stage. "Last year, we witnessed something beautiful. We saw heroism, sacrifice, and love. But there's something we didn't tell you then." The family exchanged confused glances. "You see," Steve continued, "your story didn't just touch viewers. It touched someone very specific. Someone who had been searching for a way to say thank you for 28 years. A woman in her 50s walked onto the stage. She was professionally dressed, composed, but there were tears already forming in her eyes." Chief Rodriguez's face went white. "Sarah," the woman nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Steve stepped in to explain. "Rodriguez family, meet Sarah Chen. 28 years ago, she was Sarah Williams, a 19-year-old college student whose small aircraft crashed into the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. The pilot was killed on impact. Sarah was trapped in the sinking plane with a broken leg and a punctured lung." Sarah found her voice. "I was going to die. Water was coming in. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then this young Coast Guard swimmer appeared. He couldn't have been more than 22 himself." All eyes turned to Chief Rodriguez, who was staring at Sarah in amazement. "The plane was going down fast," Sarah continued. "He had to dive repeatedly to cut me free. Every time he went under, I thought he wouldn't come back up. The last time, we were both underwater so long." She paused, overcome by the memory. "When we finally surfaced, he was holding me up, even though he was exhausted. He kept saying, 'I've got you. I'm not letting go. I've got you.'" "I remember," Chief Rodriguez whispered. "Your leg was so badly broken. You were so brave." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I passed out in the basket. When I woke up in the hospital, you were gone. They told me your name, but I was so drugged from surgery, I forgot it. For 28 years, I've been trying to find the man who saved my life. When I saw the Family Feud episode, when I heard your voice say those same words, 'I've got you,' I knew." She stepped forward, reaching into her purse. "I need to show you something." Sarah pulled out a photograph. It showed her with 3 children and several grandchildren, all gathered around a Christmas tree. "My children," she said. "My grandchildren. They exist because you wouldn't let go. But that's not all." She pulled out another photo, herself in a doctor's coat. "After the accident, after you saved me, I changed my major. I became an emergency physician. I've worked in trauma centers for 25 years. I've saved lives because you saved mine. Every patient I've helped, every family I've kept whole alive, that started with you." Chief Rodriguez was speechless, tears streaming down his face. Sarah wasn't finished. "But here's what you don't know. My daughter, the one in the middle of that photo, she just graduated from medical school. Her name is Michelle. I named her after you, Miguel. Michelle. She wants to be a flight surgeon for the Coast Guard. She wants to help save the people who save people." The two families merged in an emotional group hug. The studio audience was on their feet again, witnessing a moment of perfect symmetry, lives saved, creating more lifesavers. The ripple effect of one act of courage spanning generations. Steve Harvey, wiping his own eyes, said, "This is why we do what we do. This is why heroes matter." One young Coast Guard swimmer refuses to let go, and 28 years later, there are grandchildren who exist, patients who lived, and a new Coast Guard flight surgeon ready to carry on the mission. Sarah turned to Elena and the family. Thank you for sharing him with us. Thank you for the birthdays and anniversaries and holidays he missed with you so he could give them to others. My whole family owes you a debt we can never repay. Elena, with the grace that had carried her through 22 years of military spouse life, replied, "The debt is already paid. Every life that continues, every family that stays whole, that's the payment. That's what makes it worth it." As the cameras rolled, capturing this incredible reunion, Miguel Jr. stepped forward. "Dr. Chen, I'm studying marine biology, focusing on ocean safety and prevention. Would you be willing to collaborate? I want to find ways to prevent these accidents, to make the ocean safer, so fewer rescues are needed." "Absolutely," Sarah agreed immediately. "Prevention and rescue working together. Your father saves them in the water. Maybe we can help keep them out of danger in the first place." Chief Rodriguez finally found his voice. "Sarah, I've thought about you over the years. That rescue, it was one of the hardest. I was so young, so scared I wouldn't be able to get you out. When they told me you survived surgery, it was one of the happiest days of my early career." "You did more than save my life," Sarah said. "You gave me purpose. Every time I save someone, I think of you. Every time one of my students saves someone, that's you too. It never ends, Miguel. What you do never ends." Steve Harvey brought both families to center stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, we started with a story about a medal, about 6 lives saved in a hurricane. But what we've discovered is that heroism isn't measured in medals or numbers. It's measured in the lives that continue, the families that stay whole, the future generations who exist because someone was brave enough to jump." He looked at both families, the Rodriguez clan and Sarah, with photos of her children. "We talk about military families serving too, and that's true. But today we see that service extends even further. Every life saved creates a web of connection, gratitude, and purpose that spans decades." Isabella, standing proud in her uniform, asked Sarah's daughter Michelle to stand with her. 2 daughters, inspired by rescue, choosing service because we saw what one person's courage can do. This is how heroes are made. Not born, but inspired by other heroes. Chief Rodriguez, surrounded by both his family and Sarah's extended family, through photographs, stood humbled. "When I joined the Coast Guard, I took an oath. I will save those in peril. I thought it meant pulling people from the water, but I understand now it means so much more. Every rescue is the beginning of a story, not the end." As the taping concluded, Steve made one final announcement. The Harvey Foundation, in partnership with the Coast Guard Foundation, is establishing the Rodriguez Family Scholarship. It will provide full education funding for children of Coast Guard rescue swimmers who want to pursue careers in medicine, marine biology, or emergency services. Because heroes inspire heroes. The scholarship announcement was met with thunderous applause, but it was the quiet moment after that really mattered. As the lights dimmed and the audience filed out, 2 families stood on stage, bound forever by one moment 28 years ago when a young Coast Guard swimmer refused to let go. In the days that followed this second episode, the impact was even greater than the first. The Rodriguez Family Scholarship received millions in donations. Young people across the country inquired about Coast Guard careers. Medical schools reported increases in applications for military family members, inspired by Sarah and Isabella's stories. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome happened 3 months later. Michelle Chen, Sarah's daughter, was commissioned as a Coast Guard flight surgeon. At her commissioning ceremony, she requested that Senior Chief Rodriguez pin on her insignia. As he attached the gold oak leaves to her uniform, Senior Chief Rodriguez spoke quietly. "Your mother was brave in that sinking plane. She fought to live. That made it possible for me to save her. Now you'll be the one making sure rescue swimmers like me come home safe." "Full circle, Lieutenant." "Full circle, Senior Chief," Michelle replied, tears in her eyes. 1 year later, the connections had grown even deeper. Miguel Jr. and Dr. Sarah Chen published a groundbreaking study on ocean safety that led to new warning systems for dangerous conditions. Their research was credited with preventing dozens of potential rescue situations. Isabella, now a seasoned officer, found herself on a rescue mission during a severe storm off the Florida coast. As she coordinated the operation from the cutter's bridge, she heard the rescue swimmers report. 4 souls recovered, all stable. One of those rescued was a young marine biology student who'd been caught in a sudden squall while conducting research. When Isabella met him during the debrief, he looked at her with familiar gratitude and said, "Thank you for saving my life." Isabella smiled, hearing echoes of her father's wisdom. Thank someone else someday. Save a life in your own way. That's how you repay it. The young man would go on to develop new coral reef restoration techniques that helped protect coastlines from storm damage, potentially saving countless lives. Another ripple in an endless pond. Chief Rodriguez continued his service, training the next generation of rescue swimmers. He incorporated stories of the lives saved into his training, making sure new swimmers understood they weren't just pulling bodies from water, they were preserving futures, enabling dreams, keeping families whole. During one training session, a young swimmer asked him, "Senior Chief, how do you find the courage to jump into conditions that could kill you?" Chief Rodriguez thought of his family, of Sarah Chen, of all the letters in his wallet from people whose lives continued because of rescue swimmers. "You don't find courage," he replied. "You bring it with you. It comes from everyone who loves you, everyone who believes in you, everyone who needs you. When I jump, I'm not jumping alone. I'm jumping with the strength of every person who's counting on me, the ones in the water and the ones waiting at home." He paused, then added, "But most importantly, I jump because someone has to, because someone's mother, father, child, or friend is in trouble. And as long as I can jump, I will." The young swimmer nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. Another future hero, inspired by example. 5 years after that first Family Feud episode, the Rodriguez family gathered for a special occasion. Chief Rodriguez was retiring after 27 years of service. The ceremony was held at Coast Guard Base, Miami, with hundreds in attendance. Admiral Manning, now Vice Commandant, presided over the ceremony. Senior Chief Rodriguez's record speaks for itself. 67 lives saved directly, hundreds more through the techniques he developed and taught. But numbers don't tell the real story. He gestured to the audience. The real story is in this room. Dr. Sarah Chen and her family. Lieutenant Michelle Chen, our newest flight surgeon. The 6 survivors from Hurricane Lance and their families. The countless rescue swimmers he trained. The scholarship recipients pursuing careers in service. This is his legacy. Not medals or commendations, but lives continuing and inspiring others. When it was Chief Rodriguez's turn to speak, he stood before the crowd in his dress blues for one of the last times. 27 years ago, I raised my right hand and took an oath. I thought I understood what it meant then, but I didn't. Not really. It took a lifetime of service, of jumping into dark waters, of missing family moments, of seeing the worst nature can do to understand. He looked at his family in the front row. Service isn't about heroism. It's about love. Love for strangers who need help. Love for the families waiting at home. Love for your fellow service members who trust you with their lives. Love for the mission that's bigger than any one person. His voice grew stronger. I've been called a hero more times than I can count. But heroes aren't special people doing extraordinary things. Heroes are ordinary people who refuse to accept that suffering is inevitable, that loss is acceptable, that we can't make a difference. Every person who puts on a uniform, every family member who supports them, every citizen who says thank you for your service and means it, you're all heroes. He paused, emotion evident in his voice. To the young rescue swimmers here today, remember this. The ocean is vast and powerful and unforgiving. It will test you in ways you can't imagine. But you are not alone out there. You carry with you the strength of everyone who's ever worn this uniform, the hope of every person waiting for rescue, and the love of every family member who lets you go so you can bring others home. Senior Chief Rodriguez, Admiral Manning said, "Your watch is relieved. We have the duty." As Chief Rodriguez's flag was folded and presented to Elena, the entire assembly rose to their feet. The applause lasted 10 minutes, but it wasn't just for him. It was for all of them, the families who wait, the swimmers who jump, the rescued who go on to rescue others. After the ceremony, as the Rodriguez family posed for pictures, Steve Harvey appeared. He'd flown in specifically for the retirement. "Senior Chief," Steve said, shaking his hand warmly. "I had to be here. Had to see this through." "Mr. Harvey," Chief Rodriguez said, "I can't thank you enough. That day on your show changed everything." "No," Steve corrected him. "You changed everything. Every life you saved, every swimmer you trained, every family you kept whole. I just happened to be there when the world got to see it." As the sun set over Biscayne Bay, the Rodriguez family, now expanded to include grandchildren, gathered on the beach. Chief Rodriguez, now just Miguel to everyone but his fellow coasties, watched the ocean with peaceful eyes for the first time in nearly 3 decades. "No scanning the horizon?" Elena asked, taking his hand. "Always scanning," he admitted with a smile. "But now I can just appreciate the view." Isabella, now a lieutenant commander, stood with her own husband, also a Coast Guard officer. Their twin daughters played in the sand, already showing the water confidence of true Coast Guard kids. Miguel Jr., Dr. Rodriguez now, having earned his Ph.D. in marine safety systems, watched his children play with their cousins. His research had contributed to early warning systems that prevented countless maritime emergencies. Sophia had established a marine rescue rehabilitation center, saving dolphins and sea turtles affected by boat strikes and storms. She often said she was just continuing her brother's work in a different way. Even Carmen, now in her 80s, remained active, volunteering with Coast Guard family support groups, being a grandmother figure to young spouses struggling with deployment. As they watched the sunset, a small boat in the distance appeared to be having engine trouble. Before anyone could say anything, Miguel was on his feet, eyes focused. "Old habits?" Elena laughed. "Someone should check on them," Miguel said. But Isabella was already on her phone, calling the Coast Guard station. Within minutes, a response boat was heading toward the vessel. The family watched as the Coast Guard crew helped the boaters, preventing what could have become an emergency. "Still saving lives, even in retirement," Miguel Jr. said proudly. "It's never really over," Miguel said quietly. "The watch continues. Others have the duty now, but we're all still connected. Every rescue, every life saved, every family kept whole-lined. We're all part of that." As the stars came out over the ocean, the Rodriguez family headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, new lives to impact. But tonight, they were together, whole and grateful. The phone call that interrupted Family Feud had revealed more than just a medal or a single act of heroism. It had revealed the true nature of service, that it extends far beyond the person in uniform, that its impact ripples through generations, that heroism isn't a moment, but a lifetime of moments, each building on the last. Chief Miguel Rodriguez had jumped into dark waters 67 times to save strangers, but in doing so, he'd saved far more than 67 lives. He'd saved futures, enabled dreams, inspired service, and created a legacy that would continue long after his watch ended. Because that's what heroes do. They jump, and in jumping, they show others that it's possible to fly.